Hello, hello, hello. I hope you all can hear me well. Let me see. Make sure I got all my settings. I guess I should have did this before I started. But I hope you all are having a awesome Sunday afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. So if you're joining me live or watching the replay, my name is Brittany Lewis. I am an artist, author, graphic designer, illustrator, and tarot enthusiast. And on Sundays, I usually, not usually, I take this time to intentionally work on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateway Tarot. So I'm very happy to have you here. Today we're going to pick up where we left off. We have a little bit of a new system going, so I'm trying out something new. So in my old streaming system, I would have a little bit of a lag in the background, which did not allow me to do some of the detail work. And since this is the time for me to sit and work on my dream project, I wanted to try something different, try a little bit of a different system. So if you've been watching this, you may be used to seeing me in my circle image. Today we're in a rectangle. We can see a little bit more of my background and things like that. But the objective is to hopefully be able to do more details so that we can actually get a little bit more work done while we stream. But I'm so happy to have you here. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I am working in Clip Studio Paint, which is my illustration program of choice. There are lots of them out there. I am working in Clip Studio Paint version 1 on a Huion tablet. So if you see me looking down, I am drawing on my tablet in real time. So you guys get a chance to see me work on this project in real life, in action and everything like that. So, second order of business, I want to say thank you to everyone who checked out last week's live stream. We had such a great time. I had an opportunity to speak with Zyjay Richardson, who is creating an oracle deck, and she's using AI image generation as a means of creation. So, it was a very interesting, very in depth conversation to kind of get to know her why, not necessarily, well, first, the two different whys. Why, what kind of brought her into, kind of drew her into creating an oracle deck, and also just kind of get an in-depth look and into the decision of using AI image generation to do so. And I thought it was a very beautiful conversation. And one of the things that I took away from it, one of the big things, and we talk about this a lot on this live stream, is making sure that, hey everyone, I'm success. Hey y'all, hey PL, and I'm successful. So happy to have you guys here. But one of the things that we talk a lot about is making sure that no matter what is going on around you in the world, that you make time to complete your dreams, to do your dreams, to do your projects, to travel, to do the things that you want to do, despite all of the noise and things that you may hear, contrary to those goals, right? So don't let anyone stop you from doing what it is that you want to do. And so it was beautiful to be able to hear someone speak on that, also to get an in-depth look at her why for creating her podcast. And so if you have not checked that out, please be sure to do so. It was just such a good time. Next week we're actually going to have two more guests. So we'll be sitting and creating with Sam and Lee. They joined me a few live streams ago in the chat, and we worked it out so that we could create together next week. That's going to be so much fun. It'll be more about tips and tricks in creating. So if you are an artist or aspiring artist, or maybe just want to learn about some of the behind the scenes things, aside from the way that I explain my tarot deck, just some of the other nuances of being a creator, that's going to be the live stream for you. It's going to be so much fun. Like I said, it's going to be three of us. That's going to be a good time. Already, it's been fun. So yeah, those are the couple of things we got going on. So make sure if you have not watched last week's live stream, that you just take a moment out of your day to check that out. It was such a great talk. And then if next week, if you're interested in learning some tips and tricks for creating, especially digitally creating, because that's the main means of which I create illustrations, you want to learn more about that, be sure to check that out. I love to have you on. And if you're interested in joining me on the live, be sure to let me know. You can reach out to me on Instagram and DM, or you can email me. Hey, Black Z2, happy to see you. Yeah, so if you are interested in any of that kind of thing, just kind of reach out. I love having people on here to talk to me about whatever it is that you guys are have going on. And so, yeah, here we are. So let's get into it. So this Two of Pentacles. Now, my goal was to have this picture done, and so that we can move on to our next image. And so to do that, I was kind of rushing and things like that. It just didn't feel right. So it felt better for me to just go ahead and, take my time as I have been doing, and just create at my own pace and finish this with you guys. So far, where we left off with our the last time we were here, which was the week before last, we had pretty much finished up her leotard. We hadn't really given her any face, details or anything like that. So I'll zoom in so you guys can kind of see what she looks like up close. I did do her face, I did her arms, and I did her hair. Just kind of pretty much finished her up. I also worked on the Pentacles, and then I had left the background. So we gave her a sky background, something very simple, very easy. This is going to be a card that's not going to be, full of detail like some of the other cards, especially in this particular suit. This is going to be a little bit lighter. I'm still thinking about making this bottom pinnacle a clock. I don't know yet, so we'll maybe explore that today. We're going to do that. And then, but the main thing that I would like to do is give her some finishing touches, because right now she's just sort of sitting on the background. So artistically, hey, K Marie, how you doing? Hey, girl. So right now, we just want to make sure that we kind of bring her into the background, kind of blend her with what's going on in the scene. So we're going to add some rim lights. We're also going to paint the water. Now, disclaimer, landscapes are not my strongest suit, right? I do pretty good. I manage it okay, but I do a lot more portraits and things like that. So people are always easier for me to draw. So we're going to figure this out together. You guys are going to get to see sort of my process of, if it's something that I'm drawing that I'm not great with, how I kind of navigate that situation. So last week in our talk with Zajay, we talked a little bit about, of course, the AI and the choice to use AI as an image generation, as a means of creating. And then, as you may be aware, AI is a very controversial topic. However, what I found super duper interesting was just having a real life perspective of, why use that as a means. I know a lot of times in our artistic community, because we're so tied to what it is that we do, that sort of thing can be hurtful to see people rather than hire someone, to create images for them. They decide to, go the route of image generation. But one thing that we have to keep in mind is that not everyone has access or resources for hiring an artist, right? That's something that I had to kind of come to the realization of. Not everybody's got it like that, right? And so if not everyone has it like that, who are we to deny them the opportunity to create? Now, when it comes to like the overall theft of artwork to make image generation a thing, there has been some progress in that realm, and there's certainly something that I don't stand for, like theft is theft. In any other IP situation, you wouldn't have this sort of issue that artists are having. For example, on my YouTube channel right now, there are videos where early on I would use like copywritten music. I didn't know any better. So I would use copywritten music. And at first it was okay, but then they tightened up and was like, well, no, you can't do that. So for instance, there's a video right now on my channel that I believe has like 20,000 views. It's a painting of a guy named Felix. At the beginning of this painting, I used two copywritten things. I used the theme song for Felix the Cat at the beginning, and then the majority of the video uses a song by Loud Love It. Now, at first, everything was great, but once this video started to rack up views, Loud Love It, or whoever owns the rights to Loud Love It's artwork and his music, was like, no, ma'am, you didn't ask permission. You did not ask permission to use this music, right? And we don't give you permission to use it. And so although this channel is not monetized, that video is, right? Because I use someone else's intellectual property in a video. And so that's one of a couple of videos on this channel right now. You guys can go and check this out right now that someone else is allowed to make money on. So the same thing applies with image generation. To my understanding, the way that this happened is that the computer programmers, or the people who programmed the algorithms to create images, scoured the internet and used lots of images from artists who are some who are no longer living, and a lot of them who aren't. There were thousands of them who have been affected, to teach this algorithm how to create imagery. They did not ask for permission. Right early on, it was very evident, because you would even see like signatures from the artist's work and things like that. So it's very, very apparent that was happening. Now things are because the works are what is it, like a mishmash. Y'all know what I'm saying. They're a mix of different artist styles and techniques and things like that. Compositions is a little bit harder to identify the actual artist that whose work was used to create this image. Early on, it was not so. It was very, very apparent, right? And so it was easier once artists found out that this was happening, it was very easy for them to figure out who was actually being affected. So just like Lyle Lovett or whoever owns Lyle Lovett's rights to his music was able to say, okay, no, ma'am, you can't use this. Now we're going to take this video that's got thousands of views on it and we're going to make money every time somebody plays it. The same should apply for artists whose work was impacted by the AI generation, right? So that thing is something that is being worked out right now. There's currently a couple of lawsuits. There are advocacy groups, which is awesome, and that's where I stand on that. Like, absolutely, please do that. But as a technology, I do see the draw of it. You know what I mean? I have to take a little bit of an objective approach as to its usefulness and that kind of thing. And so it's very interesting to hear that side of the story outside of the artist community, outside of the tarot community, and things like that. I think ultimately it's going to be up to the consumer to decide whether or not that's something they can support or whether or not it's not. I think it is fair that within a tarot deck or within any artwork or anything like that, there's a disclaimer that this is an AI generated image, right? That way the consumers are charged with the information to make an informed decision. But thankfully, like I said, precedents and things are being set. I will argue that they're already being set. The Lyle Lovett is just one very small example, and I'm not a huge YouTuber or anything like that, but that is one example of how that works and how that precedent has already been set for copyrighted works, right? The same thing happened with hip hop early on, where they were using musicians' work without their permission to create break beats and things like that to make the music of hip hop. And, you know, the artists, musicians whose work was taken to do that later came on. There were lots of lawsuits, and now when you hear songs like Diddy's what is it, the song that he made when Biggie Smalls passed away, Sting gets paid for that, right? And there are similar such instances. And so this is no different, right? This is absolutely no different. So it happens all the time. Does it make it right? No, but hopefully we will see some forward movement here where artists will have that same sort of protection. Where I think the real change is going to happen is when it comes to your musicians, not musicians, but your musicians and your actors, when you get into using voice likenesses. One thing that I came across that was a little bit scary, it was a little bit like I really couldn't understand the why behind it. I was listening to, and my husband sent me a couple of videos where it was supposed to be Dolores Cannon speaking, right? And Dolores Cannon is a lady who developed a technique of hypnosis in order to access people's past lives, and that kind of thing interests me. And so he sent me a video where it's supposed to be her speaking. Now, normally when you see Dolores Cannon videos, you usually see her in the video, right? In this particular case, you don't see her, but you hear her voice. Now, the longer I listened to this video, the longer it became kind of apparent that I don't think this is Dolores Cannon talking, right? But the problem was that the people who were using Dolores Cannon's voice, her likeness, right, did not specify that was what they were doing. They actually sold the video of Dolores Cannon speaks on whatever the topic was. So if I had not been aware that this topic wasn't necessarily something that I'm used to hearing Dolores Cannon speak on, that was red flag number one. And then the more I listened to it, the more I could hear certain anomalies. I think that's where you're going to have sort of the most change, is when you have people sort of fight that battle, right? Because here someone is able to go in and pretend to be Dolores Cannon, right? They wrote a script, they put it through a voice modulator or whatever it is called to create this, body of work and say that it's from Dolores Cannon when in fact it isn't. So I think that sort of thing is where you're going to have the most change once you get into some of these bigger names, voices being used and manipulated in a way without their express permission. The same, like I said, when it happened to me, with the Lyle Lovett situation on that particular video, the same thing. And so rather than, to me, the problem comes in is like, why didn't they just say, first of all, if why didn't they just create something that says this is inspired by Dolores Cannon, right? They could have done that. They could have used any other voice. They decided to use or pretend that Dolores Cannon was saying these things, and I think that's sort of the realm that it gets really, really icky and very, very murky very quickly, right? So I think that's where you're going to see the most sort of movement in this way. But there are advocacy groups out there, one of which is the Graphic Artists Guild, which I act as the Southern Regional Rep for. I know that the Graphic Artists Guild has an advocacy group that actually actively goes to Congress and things like that and fights for the rights of artists. So there are, people out there fighting the good fight. There are people out there who are actually putting actions to their words, because a lot of times in these spirited conversations about AI, you hear a lot of rah-rah about it, but there's not a lot of you know um, movement for change other than hearing the rah-rah about it, right? And so for me, my thing is, if you're against something, which I wholeheartedly believe you have the right to be, I am one of those people, then make it a point to support actual human artists, right? Make it a point to buy items and things from their shops, and even if you don't have the money to do that, make it a point to share their work, because it's sort of like this. It's sort of like the law of attraction. I saw a lady who said, well, I wish that there were more actual artists and things that come across my feed, and you have to actually make it a point to make that happen, right? With the algorithm, the more that you interact with something, whether that is for or against a thing, right, the more that that thing is presented to you. So if you're doing all this rah rah online, you're going to see more of the thing that you don't want to see. Same with the law of attraction. The more that you pay attention to the things that you don't want, the more those things tend to show up in your reality. Exact same principle. So if you are one of those people who are, wanting to support artists and things like that, and you're wanting to, make a difference and actually, like, um, I don't know, fight against this uprising of, new technology that's happening, then you actually have to put in some work, right? Right? It's not just going to happen because you're upset about it and you and your friends on Facebook are talking about it. That's not how that happens. You actually have to put those words into practice. You have to put that into action. So one of the things that I do, not in protest for or not necessarily in protest to AI, but one of the things that I do just in general is that most of the tarot decks and things that I have come from indie artists, right? For one, I connect with the imagery a whole heck of a lot better than a lot of the commercial decks that I've seen. And two, that is my way of supporting my fellow artists. I don't have to go out and protest, right? I don't have to do that. I don't have to raise hell about it. I go out and put my money where my mouth is. You have to do the same thing. Have to go out and put your money where your mouth is. Now, what I'm doing here on this screen, I am experiencing a little bit of a lag, but not nearly as bad as I have on my older system. But I've set up some sort of blocks of color. Now, I am using a reference. I actually have a couple of references here, and it's going to be over in my reference box that I'll make a little bit bigger for you guys to see. These references I got from Pexels, which is an image database that is free for commercial use. So if you are an artist and you are working and trying to find references, I highly recommend using Pexels. Pexels is awesome. It's a treasure trove of imagery. So yesterday, while I was preparing for today's live stream, I went over to Pexels, and actually I went to Google first. But then I was like, well, let me just go to Pexels because they tend to, I don't have as many issues with references from there. So I went over to Pixels and I typed in beach waves because she's sort of standing in the middle of some water, in the middle of some waves, and I found me some references. Now, again, landscapes are not necessarily my strongest artistic ability, but references help out a lot because once I can block in colors, then I can, I can fiddle with it and add a little razzle dazzle until it starts looking a lot like what it is that I want it to look like. So I am working from, I think, which one did I think it was this one. Let me make sure. So I'm working from, and I'll probably work from I don't know why I'm getting tongue tied today. A conglomeration of all of these reference images, whether that's me pulling colors from it, whether that's pulling shapes and things like that. And so, because again, and I hate to keep saying this, but because I don't want to charge it to my experience, but it is what it is. Because landscapes is something that I'm actively working to improve on. Let me say it that way. I'm just going to break this down into larger shapes. So that's pretty much what I've done. I just laid down some color, just pick some colors from the images here, and I'm pretty much concentrating on that very front portion where the wave is sort of coming up like this, and then you have the sandy beach out in front. So that's sort of where I'm concentrating my reference material from, right? And so I am drawing shapes, and those shapes will eventually become actual water or something that looks a little bit like water. So that's what I'm doing now. So I'm just, not doing anything fancy right now. I'm using a dry brush. And one thing that you'll notice is that this is my brush menu, right? I have hundreds and hundreds of brushes. When I'm doing digital illustration, I'm usually only using two. Of all these brushes, I'm usually only using two. Now, this set of brushes I got from another artist, where again, if you're, wanting to support artists, then support artists, right? Buy from their shops and things like that. So there's an artist whose name I do forget, but whose work I really, really love. And you guys can look up ID because I believe that is his moniker. I don't really remember his name. Anyhow, he had a collection of brushes and pens and things like that. There are a few. Aaron Blaze is another one. That's where I got my water brushes from. But anyhow, he has a whole, bunch of brushes, right, that I purchased from his pack. I usually only use the Hotline brush, and it is a round brush. And this is what I did all of this with. Um, I use the hotline brush, and then I will use like the dry opaque brush, and that usually gives me a little bit of texture. So you don't have to be super fancy. Again, really your tools are not as important as your skill level. So if you're, learning to do artwork, study from reference, study and observe real life. And then it really does, you don't have to have the best of the best of the best in order to create, impactful artwork. It is not even necessary, just so long as you are able to, learn from it, right? So, yeah, that is my little bit of a spiel on AI and sort of where I stand with it. I am very happy to hear that, the lawsuit and things are taking place. I heard, I don't know how true this is, but I heard George R. Martin, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, the author of Game of Thrones, is also sort of in a lawsuit right now. And so I think that's where you're going to get the most movement, is when you have these highly influential people who are also fighting the fight, right? In the meantime, like I said, if you're wanting to support artists and things like that, put your money where your mouth is, right? Because it's just like any other thing in commerce. If people aren't buying it, if there's no demand for it, right, then there's really no need to supply it. If there's no people, if it's not making a ruckus in the way that things work in our society, good and bad all make good publicity, right? Whether it's good or bad, it all makes good publicity. And that's sort of how it works in our society. So the more that it's drawing attention, the more popular it becomes, because you're doing pretty much the opposite of what it is that you're trying to do, which is to raise awareness. Again, ultimately, it is up to the consumer. And I do believe that an informed decision is always fair. So we want to give people as much information as possible, but also at the same time, you want to be able to just support human artists. That's all. That's it. That's all. So I'm trying out some different brushes. Now, these brushes are water brushes that I purchased from artist Aaron Blaze, right? And so Aaron Blaze is really awesome. He does a lot of that's a little bit too calm. He does a lot of animation. He used to work for Disney. That's sort of how I found him. Not because he worked for Disney, but because he did a lot of animated animation tutorials and things like that. He goes live weekly, to my understanding, and he is a treasure trove of information. And I learned about Aaron Blaze. I have plenty of brushes and things like that, because he does animals and water and things like that far better than I do. So when it comes for me to continue my studies as an artist, I look to, people who are better at this than, of course, I am. And hopefully that I can help, teach someone who may be in a similar situation. Maybe they're not great with character design. Maybe I can be the person that they look to learn how to do certain things like that. So as an artist, we're always evolving. We're always, changing. We're always learning and growing and things like that, as you should in any discipline. Should always learn and grow. I think that becomes a bit of a superpower, because if you're in a space where you're not afraid to be wrong, right? You're not afraid or not intimidated by, not knowing something. The world kind of opens up to you, because every experience becomes a learning experience. And if every experience is a learning experience, then you really can't mess up anything, right? Because you're constantly learning, and you're constantly learning, growing and evolving as you go. So, great example. I am, again, the Southern Regional Rep at the Graphic Artists Guild. Is a very new position for me. I was the newest rep, but we have a new one. And I'm steady learning, how exactly to navigate that realm. It's been about a year, and I don't take offense to being corrected. Right? To me, it doesn't bother me at all, to be corrected, or to not know a thing, and to not have the answers. To ask for help, that's something else that I had to learn, but it's something that I'm very comfortable with doing. If I don't know something, I'm going to ask questions, and so should you. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't allow your ego to keep you from getting the information that you need in order for you to move forward in whatever it is that you're doing. So we're still building this up. This is not pretty by any means yet, right? It's going to get there. Not pretty by any means, but we're just picking and grabbing colors and things like that from my reference. And I'm keeping the shapes, kind of keeping in mind the shape of the wave that I'm drawing. Now over here it gets a little bit lost in the sauce. It gets a little muddy, but we'll correct it a little bit as we go. But I'm keeping in mind my shapes, just keeping things very loose, very, very, very loose, and not really concerning myself with perfection right now. I'm not really doing that. Right now it looks a little, it looks a little bit muddy, but we're gonna get there. So long as we have sort of those colors, right? We have those shapes, it'll get to where it needs to be. So I hope you guys are having a great Sunday afternoon. Again, if you're watching this live or you're watching the replay, I greatly and appreciate you all for spending this afternoon with me. I didn't really have a plan or anything of what I wanted to talk about this week. I just knew that we needed to get this card done. We need to get this card done as soon as possible so that I can move on to the next card, which is the Two of Swords. And the reason I guess I wasn't in too big of a hurry to finish this particular card is because the Two of Swords isn't finished drawn, like the sketch isn't done yet. So we'll get there too. It's been a busy week. School started this week. I've had quite a bit of things happening, this week, and so you just have to give yourself grace. So if you're working on something and maybe things aren't going as fast as you would like, just give yourself a little bit of grace. It's going to be all right. You set the timeline for this live stream. I was running hella behind. I was running so far behind, and I could feel like that old panic programming, not panic like his brother panic, but like me actually panicking, because I was feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm scheduled to be here at 3:30. I don't want to be late. I don't want to. I don't know if anybody's waiting or not, but I don't want to have people waiting on me and then I not start when I say I'm going to start. But at the same time, you have to show yourself grace, man. It's going to be all right. All things work out in our favor. And that's something that we have to keep in mind. So I am, and you guys can't see, I'm I'm pointing to this thing with my hand, but you can't see my hand. So I'm going to use this pointer down here. So we're looking at our reference, right? I am pretty much using this block of information here to create this area, right? It's not looking the way I want it to look, so we're just going to keep at it. We're going to keep working on it. What I think I would like to do is take this and reshape, just taking this base color, right? And we're going to reshape what's happening behind her. I still want to keep the bit of wave and drama. It's not a lot of drama, but there's a little bit of drama in this area here. So what I'm going to do is make this a little bit higher. And then again, we'll go back to adding shapes and things like that. So see how there's a little bit of drama here, and then there's a little more calm. Even though there's a lot happening, there's far less happening here than there is here, and even more back here, right? So we kind of want to imply that sort of thing, because the whole idea of this particular card is that, and actually, this would probably have been easy. That would have been easier for me to do. But anyhow, the whole idea of this card is that she's balancing multiple aspects of her life at the same time. That is the idea behind the Two of Pentacles, right? She's balancing both her time and her money, her life, her business, her goals and things like that with her other responsibilities. This is a card that I am very much can identify with the messaging of, and I don't know if I ever pointed this out. So in my sketch, as I was creating the form and the pentacles and things like that, I also made notes to myself so that I can kind of remember, because I drew this picture a very long time ago, several months ago actually. And so we're just now getting to the coloring phase of it, but pointing to her foot to emphasize her balance, right? And so when I was developing this card, one of the things that I had to do was rein in all of my ideas. Because as creators, we tend to have so many ideas, and sometimes and I've seen this with other artists where they put so much into one image. Sometimes less is more, and this was one of those cards where less was more. Now I have other cards, I don't know if I have them pulled up here. This is my foot reference and things like that. But in my Queen of Pentacles, for example, she's surrounded by these leaves and all of these very detailed items in her picture, and that helps tell the story of what that Queen of Pentacles represents. In this particular case, I decided to go a little more nuanced, a little closer to the reference material of the Rider-Waite-Smith card, and I just really didn't want to have to draw a whole lot for this. I don't want to I don't think every card, because there's 78 of them, I don't think every card has to be like chocked full of things. Right? And the original Two of Pentacles is not chock full of things. It's a guy dancing. He's not in the water, he's actually on the beach, but behind him is water and there are ships and things like that. So there's not a lot going on in the reference material, and this is one of those cards that I think is closest to the reference material in the deck. I think the other card would be the Strength card, is pretty close to the reference material. There are a couple others, but for the most part, they're, whatever my interpretation of that card is, this is just one of those that's not quite the not quite the exact same as the Rider-Waite-Smith system. So now that I'm looking through my references again, I think I would have been easier for me to just go the route of this particular picture with the crashing waves and things like that, as opposed to me trying to figure out how to draw. So I don't know. I'm figuring this out, and you guys are getting a chance to see me figure this out in real time. I think I might actually go with, we're gonna try it out because there's no right or wrong, right? I think I might actually go with this particular reference because I think it's gonna be easier for me. I really do. And it's the closest, I think, again, because our original source material, the dancer is sort of on the beach. This has more of that beachy feel because you have the sandy area out in front, and then you have the waves that are crashing up against what looks like a cliff. So I think we're going to sort of lean into that a little bit, right? And so that base sandy color is what I'm sort of just swiping in the front. And then we have this action of these waves, right? And so they kind of go up, and I'm going to do this on a separate layer just in case I decided I don't like it. I don't want to mess up what's behind it. They kind of go up in a sort of cloud, right? In this kind of shape, right? So that kind of goes up in this kind of shape. It's a little more dramatic in this way. And then there is a little less shape, and that could be where she's stepping here. And then it goes up a little bit further up here. And so this is where I'll put all of that drama, right? All of that drama. And I'm going to pull out maybe a gray blue color as my sort of under layer. And again, I'm doing this on a separate layer so that if I mess up, if I mess something up, and if I decide I don't really like that as much as I thought I was going to like it, then I'm not, I'm not messing up the layer underneath it. I can kind of go back to what I was planning to do at first, right? So I actually have a cloud brush that I think will be quite helpful here. So we're going to take my cloud liner brush, and that's sort of how I drew my clouds in the background. And we're just going to fill in, see how it has that misty look to it. We're going to fill in a little bit of this space here, right? And then we can add to that the splashes and the different textures and things like that with some of my other brushes. So this is one of those things where having a specialty brush does kind of come in handy. Although specialty brushes I use very few and far between. In this particular case, I think we can kind of use it. If not to do anything else, just to kind of build these shapes up, and then we will uh, use maybe an airbrush or a spray brush or something like that to emphasize certain things. Now, this doesn't look great. It does not look great, but that's okay. Just keep walking with me. We're going to get there. So, what I want to do now is I have a couple of splash brushes. Do I want to use this? Let's see. I'm going to go on top of that with another layer. We're going to make this brush a little bit bigger and see how it kind of adds that spray. And what it's doing is it's picking up this particular color behind. So we're going to go in with a brighter white. Okay. So then when we lay this down, we're getting, more white. But I think what might even be even better, there we go. If we go with, and so we kind of, and not all of this is spray either, right? So we're going to have to blend some of this in so that we're getting some of these like blurred areas and things like that. Oh, wrong thing. Things like that. So if you have a project or something that you would like to join me on live and talking about, I would love to have you on. I learned a lot. I learned a lot just interviewing Zajay and just sort of going through the process of preparing for that interview because I didn't want to just ask arbitrary questions or anything like that. I really wanted to take my time and have a really thoughtful and in-depth conversation. And again, if you have not checked that out, I highly recommend it. Not just because it's my interview, but I really just highly recommend you go and have a look at that because again, we had a very it was very insightful. It really was. And me and Zajay have so much in common, which I think was really awesome. So her birthday is 7/12, mine is 7/21. Immediately we got along really, really well. And it was just a great time. So I highly recommend that if you are just needing something to watch or want to support me and artists, right? We talked a little bit about that, supporting your local artists. I would highly recommend going and checking out that particular live stream. Then something else that you can do to support me is to make sure you hit the like button on this live stream. That lets the algorithm of YouTube know that you actually like this type of content. It also will help other people who may also like this type of content find it, right? So that's super duper important. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure if you feel like it, you subscribe. And come back next week because we're going to be talking with Sam and Lee. We're going to be conversing with them and having a good time and kind of showing them some of the tips and tricks. And this is a hot mess. This is not looking good at all. We're gonna get there though. Patience, man, patience. So I had a teacher. I talked about her. On another live stream, and she was the one that was like, "I don't think you have." She said something so crazy to me. It was like, "I don't think you have the mental capacity or something to do objects." And I was like, "That's rude." But anyhow, she gave some great advice, right? One of her things was that if you're working on something and you're painting it and it's not looking good, work on it for another hour. Now, whether or not I work on it for an hour here with you guys, I will definitely give it some more time just to be able to build and that kind of thing. Because it'll look good. It just might take a little while to get there. But see, now I'm erasing some of what I've built here, and you can see that underlayer of you know those waves that I created earlier, right? So that kind of adds to the texture of this water. And so we'll keep going. We'll keep building at it. It usually is going to look rough before it looks good. And that's just sort of the way the cookie crumbles. So what I would like to do is to add a little bit more, uh, like an aqua green color, maybe. A little bit more of an aqua green color in here. Also in here. So that we're getting that ocean feel. And then I can actually also start to build up the water down at the bottom. So our I put down our brown color, but I think what I could also do is go back in with a little more white. I'm going to make my rough brush, and then I'm just going to start drawing in these shapes. And pretty much what's happening is that you have these connecting, you know, shapes of water, like so. And sort of, and this rough brush gives that illusion of bubbles a little bit, right? And then we'll add some more texture to it a little bit later on down the line, right? And so that looks a little bit, it's coming together a little bit, right? It's going to take a little bit of patience. And that's the fun of being creative. You get to experiment. I think sometimes we take ourselves way too seriously. And in doing so, we forget to have fun, man. And so this is one of those things. Now, I could very easily slip into, oh my gosh, this is not coming together and I'm doing it live. That's a very easy place to get into if I wanted to, but this is a demonstration of enjoy your life, right? Enjoy the process and trust the process. This is a trust the process sort of moment. I'm going to go back to my water texture brushes and I'm going to grab, I believe, I want this one. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, see, we can actually add that wave texture in between that texture. And I'm looking at my second screen because I can see what you guys see a little bit better, even though this is all happening right here. And we're getting there. Okay, we're getting there. Slowly but surely. I'm going to go back to my other reference because I think it has some colors in it. Even this is really nice. It has some colors in it that I think I like. Some stronger blues and things like that I really like a little bit better. So we're going to pull that in just to give us some color variety, especially along the bottom here. And that's what we're going to do. We're just playing around, right? So again, I hope you guys are having a great day. And while this is saving, I do want to mention that our journals are still for sale. So I do have journals that are based on the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. So one of them that is very popular is the Judgment Journal. And thank you to everyone who's already bought a journal so far. I really, really appreciate that. Every sale helps support this particular project. Again, we're going back into that conversation. If you are against a certain thing, AI specifically, and you want to support artists, support artists, right? So I understand everyone may not have the money to get a canvas print, but I do offer things that are Cosmic Gateways Tarot specific that are under $10. These journals are a prime example of that. So I have my Judgment. I also have High Priestess. And then we also have the Hermit. So if you love these three specific images and you want to get journals based on these images, I would highly recommend picking up one of those. I love these journals because, for one, they're small, they're compact, they're very similar to a composition notebook. The only thing is to be aware of, and I'm not saying that this is a good or bad thing, just be aware of, right, is that they are satin coated pages. That was a happy accident from the printer. We're going to roll with it, which means that your ballpoint pen is going to be the best option for writing in this particular notebook for this particular print. Now, once these are all sold out and we go into the reprints will have your regular uncoded pages, which you can use whatever pen or marker or anything like that that you would like. But for this initial print, the ones that I've been advertising lately, they are satin coated pages. So please be aware of that. But they're beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Journals, and I had one up here with me, but I think I put it up. So thank you first of all to anyone who's already purchased a journal, and if it's something that you're interested in, don't walk, please run and get yourself a journal, because stocks are still super duper low, but they will be back in stock. Now, if you have been following this project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, and there is a specific card that you like that would make a great journal, let me know, right? Put that down in the comments below. If, for instance, you're a fan of the Queen of Wands, who is one of my favorites, and you think she would make a great journal cover, let me know and we'll add that to the catalog and things like that. And so once those are printed, we'll let you know. And so all of these things are awesome. They're going to help me with the Kickstarter later on, because these will also be add-ons that you'll be able to get along with that. So speaking of Kickstarters, that is what I'm thinking. Ain't no thinking to it. We're going to do a Kickstarter, right? Ain't no thinking. We're going to do it, right? So my goal is to have this completed by this time next year. And around this time next year, we'll get into like advertising and things like that. So with the conversation that I had with Ajay, one of the things that we talked about prior to was sort of the mechanics of having something printed overseas. So I do want to avoid having it printed during the Chinese New Year, because this will very likely be printed from a Chinese manufacturer. What I have learned is that if you're ordering anything, whether this is books, journals, whatever it is, if you're having it manufactured in China, you just kind of want to be aware of how things work around the Chinese New Year. Basically, what happens is things shut down for one, right? And then two, there's a lot of movement in terms of people changing jobs. So things are slowed down significantly. So ideally, I would have this printed sometime summer, fall, right? But I would like to begin the sort of Kickstarter process this time next year. So stay with me, walk with me. We're going to get there. You know, it's going to take a little bit of time, but we're definitely going to get there. And I'm excited to see you guys work with this particular project. I say this every week. I say this quite a lot because I am super duper excited. I think it's one of the most satisfying things that I think I've done as a creator and as a creative entrepreneur is to create things that people actually use, right? So for instance, I did a logo package for a guy who has a food truck in LA. And every time I see this guy post his food truck, and like when he first revealed how the food truck looks and like how the logo looks on the food truck, like it just legit makes my heart smile. It is such a great feeling to have, to create something that's functional, that people use and enjoy and are getting like positive feedback from. I like it. Just does something to me. It's so satisfying. It is super duper satisfying, and I do believe that this is going to be one of those things where I'm super, ain't no do believe to it. It's definitely going to be one of those things where I'm very, very excited to see you guys use and read with this deck, because as someone who's very close to it, I often have my own sort of interpretations for things like that. But to be able to see you guys interpret the cards in a way that resonates best with you, it's going to be so awesome. It truly is. It's I don't know that I am I'm also very, not very, I'm going to say I do have times where I'm very sort of introverted, right? And so sometimes like hearing people react to my work is sometimes a little bit overwhelming. But at the same time, there is a part of me that is like, I am so glad you like it. There's a part of me that's like, oh, that is so awesome. I'm always humbled by those situations and things like that. Whenever I'm at a convention and somebody comes up to me and they're like, hey, we came here just for you. Like, I can't tell you how humbling that experience is. And how grateful I am to have people who have been, watching this particular project develop for so many years. And if you're new here and this is new for you, I welcome you. I'm so glad to have you. I'm glad that you found it. I'm glad that you found the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, and I'm glad that you are enjoying it and are here to watch me create this in real time. Because I think sometimes when we watch people make things, it gives us a greater appreciation for that thing, right? So if I'm sharing some of my, thoughts and feedback and things like that about what I'm thinking in terms of, why I made her leotard yellow, orange, and blue, or not yellow, orange, and blue, but yellow, orange, and red, and why I wanted to use a clock and things, just little nuances and things like that. I think that to be able to share that in a video form is a little bit easier for me to share it this way than it is for me to write it, because you guys get to see and learn about it again in real time, right? I think that makes a huge difference. I think that makes a huge difference. I think that, it allows me to connect to you guys, right? Because again, I'm working as an artist, I do a lot of the work by myself. I often only have the feedback of my family, and which is awesome, and I certainly appreciate that always. But just to be able to put it out in the world and hear you all's thoughts about it is really awesome. It's an awesome feeling. It's an awesome experience to have and to witness and to sort of watch how it unfolds. um it's great, especially for something that I had dreamt of doing and was so very nervous about doing, because I was thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know. At that time I was doing a lot of fan art. I was only sharing fan art. I was doing a lot of like portraits and things like that. I was also only sharing like my fan art things online. And so there was this fear that if I share this part of myself, right, how will it be received? And I remember 2017, I started this witches series, right? And I did these. I always like start Inktober, but in this case, an Inktober is a thing where every October, the challenge is to create one ink drawing a day, right? So instead of doing inks, I was like, that's probably gonna be too much work for me. So I was like, let me do sketches. And so my sketches were, I was developing this series of witches, which will later become a coloring book, and I've been kind of working off and on that. But I started this series of witches, and I was sharing these sketches and things like that. And I remember getting a DM from a lady who I had known for years, right? Known her for years. In a space, she is someone who is very great about, like, holistic healing and things like that. But she didn't know that this part of me existed. And so she emailed me and was like, hey, where's all this creativity coming from? And I was like, oh, I'm just, being my authentic self, finally showing this part of me and, sharing these interests that I have. And I don't share all because, I don't think it's necessary for me to share all. But I thought that was one of the, first things that I did and started to do, where I was actually creating the work that I wanted to see. Right. And so a lot of these things at the time that I was doing it, I wasn't seeing it. I was not seeing it. I would see, like, every Halloween, there would be like witches and things like that. And none of them would look like me. Just like when it comes to this particular tarot deck, you see all of these tarot decks and things develop that I couldn't relate to. I couldn't see myself in, right? The majority, and strangely enough, that I'm thinking about it, the majority of the decks that I own, although they are mostly indie created, are things like the Crow Tarot. Well, the Crow Tarot is not indie; it's a mass produced deck. But things like the Crow Tarot, like the Golden Thread, where the people are slightly ambiguous, right? Or like just where they're not identifiably someone, right? And so I think that happens because, again, I'm having, or was having, a hard time seeing myself represented in this particular space. So what did we do about that? We created ourselves. That's what we do. We created ourselves. And so that became sort of my why, because your why is super important when motivation disappears, which it tends to do sometimes, right? Sometimes we're super eager and motivated to do a thing, and then it could be like the first roadblock or the first challenge that you come across, and then all of a sudden you're not as motivated, right? You're problem solving. Now you're trying to figure out, well, how do I draw waves? And I don't know, I never drew waves before. How do I do that? Those sorts of things can happen, and you can feel as though you're overwhelmed, or whatever the case is. Maybe it's tougher than you thought it was going to be, and you don't know exactly how to handle it. Well, knowing why you're doing a thing makes that a much easier pill to swallow, right? So if I know that if I don't put this deck out, then this part of my expression won't be released to the world. I gotta get it done. Ain't nobody else gonna do it. Nobody else is gonna see things from your unique perspective. So if there's something that you want to do, you have to be the one to do it. And I think that's one of the things that the in the AI conversation, uh, people are kind of coming to the realization of you have to find other ways of being creative. So if you're only a graphic designer or if you're only an illustrator, you're going to be forced to um, create slightly differently, right? Expand your skill set. And this is not coming to again. This is not coming together, right? So rather than lose the motivation to continue to work on this, we're just gonna keep going. You just keep pushing forward, like Miss Beth. And I remembered her last name, and now that I remember it, I'm not going to mention who she is, because she's a very influential artist here in Memphis, and I don't want to put her on Front Street like that. But Miss Elizabeth, I'll call her. Like she would tell us in class, you know, you have to keep going. You have to push it forward another hour. She would tell us, if you're getting stuck on a concept, keep drawing for another hour. If it comes together, it comes together. If not, in that another hour. And usually it does come together within that hour. And if it doesn't, move on. And again, I did this on a separate layer because I didn't know how that was going to go. Let me see. It's not looking too bad. I'm looking on my second screen so I can kind of see what you guys are seeing. And it's not too bad. It's coming together slowly but surely. You just have to know your why, right? So I know that I have to get this done so that the next time that I come back to work on the Cosmic Gateways Tarot, then we are finally working on another card for you guys, or not just for you guys, another card just so we can get this project done. I got to keep going. I can't get afraid that this is not going to come together. I just have to keep working on it. And then if it comes to a point where I'm not happy, then there are other things within this picture that I can go and work on. And that's sort of how you have to look at whatever it is that you're working on. And that's sort of how it has happened with this tarot deck altogether. I started with the Chariot, was the very first card that I attempted to do. And the Chariot that I was drawing did not look like the Chariot that I had in mind. I couldn't figure out how to do it. And so rather than stop and that was the first card too. So immediately, if that's the first card that I had, I could very easily get sort of to the place where it's like, I don't know if this project is for me, sort of situation. But again, I knew my why, right? So it's like, okay, well, the Chariot is not charioting, it's not doing what I needed to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pivot, right? I'm going to make this. I really like the way the illustration is looking so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it into the next thing, and that became my High Priestess card. And I'll show you guys in the form of. Oh, hey, thank you, PL. PL says she just put in an order. Very excited to receive her donuts. Thank you so much. So I'm going to show you guys. So not showing this to sell it to you, but I just want to show you, hoping that you can see it. This was my and you can't see it. I mean, you can't see what my mouse is seeing, but the picture of this journal started as my High Priest, not my High Priest. It started as my Chariot card, right? And so it was not coming together the way that I did it. I was trying to do like a double exposure sort of technique where within her cloak, you could see the scene of the charioteer, driving the horses and going different ways, right? It just wasn't coming together. So rather than me saying, oh no, this isn't coming together, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do, it was, okay, how can I pivot, right? How can I use this same image that has a very solid foundation to it? How can I use this to make something else? And she became my High Priestess. So that is a lesson that you can take into whatever it is that you're doing. Maybe you're wanting to travel, right? Or maybe you're wanting to start a business and you don't necessarily know how, or you started it and you're not finding certain information. Then, okay, break it down into smaller tasks, first of all, and then see what it is that you can do. What can you change? What tasks can you complete so that you can move on to the next thing, and then get to that part, cross that bridge when you get to it, whatever the thing is that's hanging you up. So you don't want to put things off. And I'm just saving my file because I'm working and I don't know if you guys have worked on many computers, but they tend sometimes to crash. So we want to make sure that we're saving. So I'm just waiting on this to save. And yep, we're done. So now my water, and that's down here. My water wasn't really doing what I wanted it to do. Not yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch focus again, pivoting to my rim light. So I do know that I want her to be a part of this scene, right? And so one of the ways that we can do that is through rim light. And rim lighting is just that. I don't know if you've ever noticed. Well, let me see. I have a picture here. Let's see if he has any rim light. So rim light is like this reflective light from your surroundings, right? And so rim light is usually like a much harder line, but sometimes you can integrate the colors of your background into like the skin tones, right? So for instance, let's see if we can see an example here. I don't know if we can. This may not be a great example. It's not. But sometimes you can kind of see, well, I guess overall he has a little bit of a grayish look to him because he's surrounded by a gray background. And the same thing sort of applies to this. So here's a great example. So looking at our foot reference, right? Looking at our foot reference, I have a little bit of I think a cool colored light lighting this foot so that I could draw it. And in her leg, you can kind of see, and that's called bounce light, by the way, the light in her skin, that's called bounce light. Now, if I wanted to highlight, for instance, a light behind her, so in our case of our Two of Pentacles, she's sort of standing in front of the horizon. We want to add what's called a rim light, which is going to be a little bit of an outline, but we're not going to outline the whole thing. We're only going to outline certain aspects of it. And I'm using this sky, but I think I'm going to go a little bit deeper so that it kind of stands up against. See, it's very, very subtle, right? Very, very, very subtle. And we can add this to her, to her hair. We can add this to her mouth a little bit. This is going to tie her to the scene. This is going to bring her in with her surroundings, right? It's very subtle. Sometimes, I guess, depending on how your lighting is set up, you'll have this where it'll be a little bit harsher of a line. Now, because this is a shadow area, I'm not going to see it in this area, but we may see a little bit of that light here. Very, very subtle, right? Same here. So we can go and tie her just a little bit, right? Doesn't have to be a lot. Doesn't have to be a very strong thing that we're doing. But we're pretty much tying her again to this scene. Tying her to this scene. And we're using a light, the color of the sky, to imply that she's in the sky. And we'll do the same in our coins. I don't know. Yeah, because we're below our coins. So I'm going to move my layer up so that it sits on top of everything. Up here. And so we can add a little bit of this light, a little bit of this reflective light into our coins, and it'll do the exact same thing, right? It'll kind of give us this rim light effect. It'll tie it to the scene, pretty much. It'll make it kind of one with the scene. Now, because this is a textured piece, I'm going to add a little bit of this blue texture. Not a lot, just a little bit. Just a little bit of this blue texture. And then what I'm going to do is blur it out a bit. So it's very subtle. So you may not see too much of a difference. Oh, wrong thing. You may not see too much of a difference. It's very, very subtle thing, right? So I can work on this until I'm ready to go back to our water, right? So we're just pivoting a little bit. I'm just adding a little bit of texture because this is a textured item. We're just adding a little bit of texture to our coin, using that reflective light from the sky and from the water as well, because she's above water, right? And so we're just subtly adding that texture to our coins. And then we can also add it to her skin as well. I think it would show up not as a blue, but more of a very desaturated purple, right? So we might be able to, not with the texture brush because we don't want it to look like she has stubble, but we can add just a little bit of this bounce light to here, and then we're going to blur it out a bit so that it's just very, very subtle. You see? And then if it's too much, what I can do is go into my eraser tool and we can take some of that out. I remember talking to a guy whose daughter was learning to draw and things like that, and she was going into graphic design as well. And he was like, uh, man, she draw with the eraser. She ain't a real artist now. He's just playing. And I'm like, well, the eraser is a tool. We use erasers. Definitely want to do that. So there's nothing wrong with using an eraser. A lot of times your eraser is just as functional as your pencil. So see, we have just a little subtle bounce light, and you'll see it quite a bit down here in her foot, right? And I want to go and grab some of this really rich blue from her second reference image. So they have this very, very rich blue, but I'm going to desaturate it a little bit because we don't want it to overwhelm her. We're just going to very, very subtly brush that in, and then we're going to subtract some of it, right? Just very subtle, right? And so that kind of helps to bring the just small things that kind of help bring the image, together. So that's what we're doing. So again, if you're here watching with me live, or if you're watching the replay, I do appreciate you so much for taking the time to sit with me this Sunday afternoon. This Sunday is a little more chill than some of the other Sundays, but I do appreciate you for being here. Now, see, we're just adding just a little hint of rim light, right? Just a little bit. And again, when it comes to brushes and things like that, I remember seeing a lot of like younger artists who obsess over what brush are you drawing with. And I used to be that way too when I was painting primarily in Photoshop. And I got a huge collection of digital brushes. I would always be like, I wonder what brush they're using. But, as I've gone and progressed as a digital artist, what I have found is that I stick to only a couple of brushes. And that's usually all that I need, unless I'm trying to articulate a certain texture. For instance, when it comes to, creating the surface of a coin, for instance, I'm using my rough brush. But for the most part, I'm using just a regular soft round brush. Not soft round brush, but I'm using a regular round brush. And then that gives me a little bit of flexibility in terms of, how hard or soft I draw, and I can get different textures and things like that. It also gives me a very painterly look that I like. There are other brushes that I have. For instance, when I'm doing my sketching, I usually use a pencil brush that kind of emulates a HB pencil, which is nice. But that's really just for me, to feel like I'm actually sketching on paper. Now, one thing I do like, there is a program called Procreate that I don't use often. I will admit, I do have it. I don't use it super duper often. I only use it to sketch in. It does a great job of emulating like traditional mediums, your paints, your pencils, your pastels, and things like that. Also, there's another program, what's it called? Corel Painter. Corel Painter is another program that does a beautiful job of that. So yeah, those just little subtle things, right? Just a little rim light. And I think so far, if I turn this off, I don't know if you guys are even gonna notice. Um, let's see. It doesn't make a huge difference. Just very, very subtle difference. They kind of tie the image together. Things like that. Okay, so we're back on our water. Back down here to this doggone water. I have several layers, and I think I was working from this layer. So if I turn that off, okay, that was that. If I turn this off, what do we have? Okay, so if I turn this off, we kind of back to square one. So okay, that's helpful. turn this one off. What does that look like? Okay, back here. And then this is our base green. I don't know, y'all. That ain't too bad. That's kind of how it happens. If I turn this off, what did I do? I wonder. So this is my base green. So what I'm going to do is, not my base green, but my base blue. What I'm going to do is I want to play with something. So what I did was I turned off this. Let me turn off everything else. I'm going to turn off all my layers, right? Again, I use layers so that if I draw on top of something and I don't really like what I did, then I don't interrupt the layers below it, right? My foundational layer. So I just turned off this layer and I'm down to my base color. So what I'm going to do is actually darken this a little bit and give it that more aqua color. And I'm going to see what that does when I turn on everything except that initial layer that I have labeled layer 6. So we're just going to wait on this to, there we go. Oh, what did I do? All right, we're going to go and do some tonal correction. And this will allow me to adjust my colors. This is one of the beautiful things about digital painting is that you can do this relatively easily. Whereas with traditional work, which I also do, don't do it as quite as often as I used to, but I definitely still do some sketching and things like that from time to time. But unlike traditional work, if I want to change a color traditionally, then I would just have to whip up a color and paint right on top of whatever I've already painted, right? The advantage of digital working is that I can actually just kind of go and fiddle with my colors. I'm still actively painting, and you guys have watched this now for about an hour to watch me still actively like make brush strokes and things like that. But when it comes to actually changing colors, and it's a little bit easier. Actually, it's a whole lot easier. No, a little easier. It's a whole lot easier. Depending on the color situation, though. In this case, because it's just a solid color, just a solid shape, it's a lot easier for me to play with the colors than it would be if I was, for instance, changing the color of her leotard. So I'll show you what that looks like real quick. And I'm not going to do it on my original layer because again, I don't want to mess that up. But if I was to take in, so right now the colors are yellow, orange, and red, right? I've painted this all as one cohesive thing. If I wanted to change that gradient, it would not, if I wanted to make like the top layer, let's say I want to make the top layer pink and the bottom layer blue, if I go through the same process, it changes the whole thing, right? Now this isn't bad. None of this is bad because my base of the that's cute. My base of the yellow, orange, and blue was so well done that it's interpreting that gradient very easily, right? And it's sort of changing how that looks and how that works relatively smoothly. So this is a good example of how that works. So if I wanted to change it, I could easily do that, right? I don't want to. So we talked a bit about this, our very first episode of this particular painting, where I was trying to decide on the color that she should wear. And one of the things that I mentioned is that to me, the Pentacles as a suit have a lot to do. I mean, it's just in general, the Pentacles of the suit have a lot to do with the physical realm, right? And so I liken that to chakras. And so for me, the pentacles coincide with your lower three chakras, your sacral, not your sacral, your root, your sacral, and then your solar plexus. And so what I did was I created her leotard to represent that, right? Oh, is it stuck? Oh, it froze. Oh, there it is. Okay. So we're looking better now. This is just the base, right? So it may need a little bit of help in the white area that I created. I believe that was on layer 10. So this is just me sort of fiddling with, not that one, this one. Okay. It's just me sort of just fiddling with what I've already drawn, taking away what I think is too much, and then, adjusting what I do want to keep. And so right now, I don't want to change. I guess I should have kept this on. No, I don't want to, change any of this, right? What I want to do right now is sort of work on this water wave texture that I have down here, because for the color of and by that I mean these little lines, these shapes down here, because it's too white. right? So we're going to go through the same process of hue and saturation, and I'm going to darken it a bit. See, it makes it gray. We're going to up the saturation. It gives me blue, right? So now not blue, but it gives me purple. So what I want to do is, and that's not bad, right? That's a happy accident. I could work with that. I could work with that. Okay, so I'm just playing around right now, right? I'm just sort of adjusting this as I go. I don't like the green. Let me go back. So about right up in here. And I can actually take this and turn back on my older layer, which is here. And then I can work with it. That's a happy accident. Now, I don't know how this looks because I'm really close to it, so I'm going to zoom out and look at it some more. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer on top of this so that I don't interrupt those colors. I'm going to grab my regular old hotline brush, and then I am going to actually, you know what? I think I'm going to go to my water brushes, and I am going to go in here and add some water texture to this in this sort of whitish color to go on top of. I can see it now. I need to zoom back in to go on top of these sort of really colorful layers. And that's just kind of how it goes, you know? There we go, a little bit brighter. Here we go. We want to be super subtle with this, right? And I can go in here and grab different ones and just add. And then see, this is going to give me that really nice wave texture. And I can go on top of that. And I need to look at it from what you guys are seeing so that I can see what that looks like. Thanks, PL. PL said it looks good. Okay, I'll take that. I don't know yet. Like I said again, I'll probably be working on this week just to sort of get it right, you know. But while we're here, I want to make the best of this time that we have together and just kind of show you the process of trial and error when it comes to creating artwork. The key though is just being patient with yourself. Give yourself tons of grace. If it's not looking right immediately, like just give it a little bit of time, it'll get there. And that's something I was really nervous about sharing with you guys because I'm always only showing the sketch and the final, or the sketch and or the final image, right? Some of the final images I hadn't showed on social media just yet, but I rarely ever show like what's happening to get to the final scene. So this is sort of how that goes. I'll be sitting here, and this is again, I talk a lot about happy accidents. I talk a lot about happy accidents because this is sort of how that happens, right? So you have where I just changed the color of that texture just to kind of see what I would get. And I got some colors that I really like. And it actually looks like maybe the colors of her leotard are reflecting in the water. Now, will that be for all of it? Do I need all of this color? Maybe not. So I can kind of use this aqua color to take some of that out, add some dimension. And I'm going to pull this deep blue color out. And so we can add these sorts of things to it. And at some point, when you guys see this again, it'll look like a completely different. But I want you to remember this sort of process. This is how it goes. So yeah, I was really, I don't know if I was afraid. I was just apprehensive about showing this part of it and being like this vulnerable in my creation because sometimes I'm just laying down marks. Sometimes I'm just laying down marks, right? I don't necessarily have a plan. I just kind of have an idea of what I want to do, and then we just kind of see if it's going to work. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but I don't often share that side of it, right? And so sharing it made me like super duper nervous. I remember telling my mom and my husband, both of them, I was like, I don't know because I'm scared to make mistakes in front of people, but this way you can see that as a professional artist who's been a professional artist for 15 years, we still make mistakes, and it's okay to do so. It's okay for you to make mistakes too. We're all trying to figure this thing out. Sometimes, like with faces and things like that, things are easier for me to do because that's where I'm strongest, right? Very, very strong with, very good at painting faces. I always have been. Creating environments is an area of study that, I still need a little bit of practice and improvement in. And so I just have to be okay with, where I am in this particular part of creating. It may not always look glamorous, right? At least not at first. But I can assure you, by the end of it, it will be. It will be. And this is sort of how that happens. So you guys get a chance to see that, and I get to get over my fear of sharing that part. And so we get to work through it together. We get to work through that together. So I hope you guys are enjoying the live stream so far. Again, if you're watching this live or if you're watching the replay, today is a very, very chill day, and I appreciate you for being here with me. I sincerely do. And I'm going to look over here. I don't like, okay, so I don't like this area. And I'm looking at the other screen, which is what you guys can see. So I don't really like this, right? So we gotta fix this part. And I think it's because it's too white. And there's not really enough color variation. Now I might be messing this up. I don't know. But I am going to experiment until it gets to looking a little bit better to my liking. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No. Make sure you write something I liked. Mm-mm. All right, let me get back to my water brushes. Let's try this one. Yeah, here you go. There we go. It's getting there. It's getting there. Yeah, so next week we'll be here with Sam and Lee. And that's going to be really cool. I know Sam mentioned that she is working on a children's book, which is really awesome. So we're going to kind of go through my process of, how you keep characters consistent. I'm going to share more in depth looking at some of the programming that I use so that if you're interested in becoming a digital artist or sort of transitioning into digital art, or maybe you just want to dabble in it a little bit, you want to learn a little bit more about it, I'll be sharing some of my favorite programs and things like that, as well as like some of the things that I use for graphic design. So it won't just be the illustration, although it will, I'm sure, be illustration heavy. Um, so yeah, if you're interested in that, I would highly recommend you check it out next week, next Sunday, same place, same time at 3:30 here on YouTube. Now, I don't know. I have the option this week to also stream on do the exact same stream at the exact same time on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, I believe, and a few others. So if you are watching this on YouTube and you would like to see this on one of those platforms, let me know in the comments, and I'll see if I can, can't get it to where you guys can watch it on your platform of choice. But for sure, we'll be right here on Instagram, not Instagram. We'll be right here on YouTube, if nowhere else. We'll be right here. There we go. So we're getting more of this sort of splash action. And I think what's throwing me off is this. There we go. Turn it off. Turn it off. I'll come back to that in a bit. But it also feels very heavy, right, in this area, right? This area too. And I think that's because I had laid down such a heavy um, base. Let me see if I can find which layer that's on. And what I'm going to do is duplicate it. And see, here we go. Now, if I turn that off, how does that look? No. I just need to go here duplicate, turn it off, and then we'll kind of shape this a little bit. Take some of this bulk out, right? Make it feel a little bit more like spray than like a blob of gray, if that makes sense. So we're getting back down to like the original shape that I had in my sketch. And I'll turn it back on so you guys can see it. Turn this up. So the sketch sort of sits on top of uh, the work so that it acts as my guideline. Now, if you've been following me and you are familiar with art, you will notice that I do not use line art. It's just not a part of my style. I think that sometimes I've seen a lot of younger artists kind of get obsessed with trying to find their style and things like that. For me, my style sort of developed as I progressed in my art career, right? It wasn't something that I intentionally went out to do. I feel like your style is sort of like your handwriting. So if you're a young artist and things like that, maybe you're trying to get into, you don't even have to be a young artist. Maybe you're just trying to, you know, create, right? And you're concerned about, oh, well, this person has a very distinctive style and that person have a very distinctive style, and I don't know what to do and that kind of thing. Don't worry so much about your style. That kind of comes with experience. And as you grow, as you begin to study and you learn from other artists and you do other techniques, your style will develop on its own, right? I feel like, oh good, PL says go to IG as well. Definitely we'll do that for sure. But as you're growing as an artist, your style just sort of develops. I didn't think I had a very distinctive style, but as I go back and look at some of my artwork, especially in this particular series, it all looks like it was created by the same artist, right? It all is very cohesive, even if the images are different. Every artist has a style. And a lot of times what I found very interesting is that sometimes you can see the artist, like the artist looks like their artwork. For instance, there's a very super popular artist named Loish, right? I think her name is Lois something, but she goes by Loish. I have a couple of her art books back here on the bookshelf. And usually you only see the artwork, right? Sometimes, and this kind of goes back to the way it was pre-internet, where you would hear music, but you may not see the artist unless they had a music video. In this case, with the art, I would always see her art, but I did not know what she looked like. Well, a couple of years ago, she started to show more of her face, and she was talking about the artwork, and she looks like her artwork. Mine is the exact same way. If you notice, a lot of my females are very busty. I'm a very busty woman, right? Some of them have very round faces. I have a very round face, and so we tend to articulate and sort of express ourselves and put ourselves into our artwork, and that becomes part of the style, right? You will show up in your artwork, regardless to whether it is intentional or not intentional. We do tend to show up in our artwork, and that is for everybody. You can always tell a little bit of something about the artist, whether this is movie makers, whether this is videographers, whether this is photographers, whoever it is, whatever the art discipline is. You can always learn something about an artist through just sort of watching them evolve. So I remember having a comment where a lady was like, I just realized this was a portrait of yourself talking about the entire Cosmic Gateway. And I'm like, well, yeah, And so she was like, I'm just realizing that. And so she was able to read and learn about me through, watching me, or not even watching me, because at the time I wasn't doing a lot of videos, but just sort of reading the images that I was creating and sort of reading some of the information that I would provide for those images. So you can always learn something about an artist through her artwork. But with that, I think we're going to leave it here. We've been about an hour and a half, which I think is great. So this is where we're leaving off. The next time you see this card, it will be done. Like, that was the goal for it. And that's not bad. That's not too bad. It need a little work. It need a little razzle dazzle. It's not quite there yet, but it's not bad. But we're going to leave it off here. And so the next time you guys see this card, it will be complete. So you'll be seeing the final image, which I'm super excited to get done and to share with you. Next week, we'll be here live on YouTube. And I got the suggestion to do IG, so we'll probably do Instagram and Facebook. Maybe even LinkedIn. I'm not sure. We'll see. But anyhow, next week, 3:30 p.m. Central, because I am on Central Standard Time, which is 4:30 Eastern. I will be here on YouTube for sure, and we'll be with Sam and Lee, and I'll give you guys all of my tips and tricks and creative secrets and things like that. There's no gatekeeping when it comes to like creating, because the information is out there. You can find out if you wanted to. So I'm more than happy to share that, especially with other artists. More than happy to share that. So we'll get into all of that next week with Sam and Lee here on YouTube. So until then, I wish you guys a happy, creative, and prosperous day, and I hope to see you here next week. And you haven't checked out that interview last week, make sure you go and check that out. And if you have not grabbed your journals yet, make sure you do that. You can watch the replay if you want to get the QR codes and things like that. If you're watching it on your television or on your phone, it's a little bit hard to scan a QR code. But anyhow, I thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, peace.